Strengthened by Angels. Ivan Moiseev, 18 years old, the U.S.S.R, 1970. Although he had never been there, Private Ivan Vanya Moiseev knew what waited for him at the major's office. The communists were endlessly calling him to the headquarters for talks, trying to re-educate him, to talk him out of his faith in God. It was lunchtime. The sun was shining brightly in the blue sky and the snow was glistening. As Moiseev walked along the snowy sidewalk, he praised God for this time alone, time to sing and pray. The morning was so bright, at first Moiseev didn't notice, but suddenly it caught his eye. A bright star began to fall from heaven. Like a comet, it came closer and became bigger and bigger. He looked up to see an angel above him, bright and powerful. Moiseev's heart was filled with joy and fear. The angel did not descend all the way to earth, but hovered about 200 yards above the ground, and he walked in the air above Moiseev as though he was walking on the same road. And then the angel spoke. "Ivan, go. Do not be afraid. I am with you." Ivan couldn't speak, but his joy was like fire within him, and somehow he made it to Major Gidenko's office and knocked quietly at the door. Major Gidenko, head of the Political Directive Committee, looked up as the young soldier entered. Ivan Moiseev had been interrogated again and again by many others and had never backed away from his faith. Still, Gidenko was certain he could solve this problem. "Moiseev, you don't look like a poor pupil to me. Why are you not learning the correct answers?" he asked. "Sometimes there's a difference between the correct answers and the true ones," Ivan answered. "Sometimes God does not permit me to give the correct answers." "So God talks to you? Who is this God of yours?" As soon as he asked the question, Gidenko regretted it. Ivan leaned forward in his chair, his face glowing with joy at the opportunity to share his faith. "Sir, he is the one who created all the universe. He greatly loves man and sent his son." Gidenko interrupted. Yes, I know the Christian teaching. But what has that got to do with being a soldier? Do you disagree with the teachings of the glorious Red Army?" "No, sir." "But do you not accept the principles of scientific atheism, upon which is based our entire Soviet state, and the military power of the army?" "I cannot accept what I know to be untrue. Everything else I can gladly accept." "Moiseev, no one can prove the existence of God. Even pastors and priests agree on that." "Sir, they may speak about not being able to prove God, but there's no question about knowing him. He is with me, right now in this room. Before I came here, he sent an angel to encourage me." Gidenko stared intently at Ivan. At last he spoke warily. "I am sorry, Moiseev, that you cannot be reasonable. Your persistence will do nothing for you except bring discomfort. However, through the years, I have found that men like you often come to their senses with a little discipline. I am ordering you to stand in the street tonight after taps are played, and you will stand there until you are willing to reconsider this nonsense about talking of God and angels. Since the temperature is likely to be between 13 degrees below zero, for your sake, I hope you can quickly agree to behave sensibly. Tomorrow we shall make a plan together for your political re-education. You are dismissed." Gidenko expected Moiseev to hesitate, to reconsider. Instead, he squared his shoulders and walked quietly to the door. "Private Moiseev." When the soldier turned around, Gidenko noticed he was a little pale. Then he had understood the order. "You will obey my instructions in summer uniform. That is all." That night, as the bugle sounded, Ivan made his way down the stairs of the barracks and into the snowy street. He recoiled at the icy blast of wind that burned his ears and made his eyes water. His thin summer uniform was of no help in the bitter cold, and he glanced at his watch. It was 1 minute after 10 o'clock. Tonight he would have a long time to pray. But for the first time since he had been in the Soviet Army, prayer had not come easily. He was worried. Could he stand out here all night? What if he froze to death? Would they let him freeze to death? What if he got so cold he gave in to their demands? The what-ifs flooded his mind and left it spinning. He knew that he had to think of something. Then he remembered the angel who had visited him in the morning. The angel had said, "Do not be afraid, I am with you." And suddenly he realized the angel's words had been for tonight. And although he could no longer see him, Moisteev knew that the angel was still there with him, and he began to pray fervently. It was 12:30 when he was distracted from his prayers by the crunching of the snow. Bundled in their overcoats, hats, and boots, 3 officers were slowly making their way toward him. "Private Moisteev, have you changed your mind yet? Are you ready to come in and get warm?" "No, comrade officers. As much as I want to come in and go to bed, I cannot. I will never agree to remain silent about God." Even in the dim light, Moisteev could see that the officers were amazed and confused. How could he stand such cold? "Do you plan to stand out here all night long?" "I don't see how anything else is possible, and God is helping me." Ivan checked his hands. They were cold, but not too cold. He could still move his toes easily. It was a miracle. He looked at the officers and could see that even in their coats they were already shaking from the cold. They were stamping their feet and clapping their hands and impatient to return to the heated barracks. "You'll feel differently in about another hour," the senior officer mumbled, and then they quickly turned away. Ivan continued to pray for all the believers he knew. He sang Christmas carols. He prayed for every officer he knew and knew of. He cried out to God on behalf of the men in the barracks. His mind seemed to be floating somewhere outside of his head, and as much as he tried, prayer eluded him. Ivan was dozing on his feet when at 3 o'clock the senior officer on duty woke him and let him return to the barracks. For the next 12 nights, Ivan continued to stand in the street outside the barracks. Miraculously, he did not freeze, nor did he beg for mercy. Ivan continued to speak about his faith to the comrades and officers, and he sang about the glory of Jesus Christ in his barracks, though this was strictly prohibited. To those who threatened him replied, "A lark threatened with death for singing will still continue to sing. She cannot renounce her nature, neither can we Christians." Soldiers around him were converted, impressed by his ardent faith. His commanders continued to interrogate him, trying to get him to deny Jesus. They put him in refrigerated cells. They clothed him in a special rubber suit, to which they pumped air until his chest was so compressed he could scarcely breathe. At the age of 20, Ivan knew that the communists would kill him. On July 11th, 1972, he wrote his parents, "You will not see me any more." Then he described a vision of angels in heaven, which God had sent to strengthen him for the last trial. A few days later, his body was returned to his family, and it showed that he had been stabbed 6 times around the heart. He had wounds on his head and around his mouth, and there were signs of beatings on his whole body. Then they had him drowned. Colonel Malsin, his commander, said, "Moisteev died with difficulty. He fought with death, but he died as a Christian." The father of this Christian hero writes us today, "May it be that this living flower, which gave the fragrance of its youth on the cross, should be an example for all the faithful youth. May they love Christ as our son has loved him." And this is a letter from Vanya to his parents written on June 15th, 1972. "My dear parents, the Lord has showed the way to me, and I have decided to follow it. I will now have more severe and bigger battles than I have had till now, but I do not fear them. He goes before me. Do not grieve for me, my dear parents. It is because I love Jesus more than myself I listen to him, though my body does fear somewhat, or does not wish to go through everything. I do this because I do not value my life as much as I value him, and I will not await my own will, but I will follow as the Lord leads. He says go, and I go. Do not become grieved of this, for this is your son's last letter. Because I myself, when I see and hear visions, hear how angels speak and see, I am even amazed and cannot believe that Vanya, your son, talks with angels. He, Vanya, has also had sins and failings, but through sufferings the Lord has wiped them away, and he does not live as he wishes, but as the Lord wishes. We continue to shout our praise even when we're hemmed in with trouble, because we know how troubles can develop passionate patience in us, and how that patience, in turn, forges the tempered steel of virtue, keeping us alert for whatever God will do next. In alert expectancy such as this, we are never left feeling shortchanged. Quite the contrary. We can't round up enough containers to hold everything God generously pours into our lives through the Holy Spirit. Romans 5, 3-5, written by Paul, who was martyred in Rome in 65 AD.